Jesse.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Good.
Good. Did you all get that repo that I posted?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Go ahead and clone that down because that's what we're going to be working with today. Because we only have the 2 hours, I'm going to be focusing on the front end material mostly. We're still going to do some back end stuff, but mostly the front end. So just be aware of that. But you have a study hall right after this to follow up with any questions on back end stuff. But I figured you guys had a lot of Rails at this point. So yeah. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, go ahead and get that repo clone down, and we'll get that started if you want to code along. Yeah. All right, awesome. Let me know, how about this? Once you have it cloned down, go ahead and just throw your name in chat for me, and then we'll get going. Cool, so most of you have it cloned down. For those of you that are just joining us, make sure you clone down that repo if you want to code along. And once you have it cloned down, just go ahead and throw your name in chat for me. Cool. Awesome, Carlos. Cool. Ben, great. Benjamina. My younger brother's name is Benjamin, so we call him Benjamina Ballerina. So,
well, I read the Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter's books.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always called Benjamima Puddle Duck.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Those are great books. Yeah, ours is from Muppet Treasure Island. So, you know, equally literary treasure, you know. All right, so if you're just joining us, make sure that you clone down that repo that I posted if you would like to code along. I'm going to go ahead and get going in like 1 more minute. So clone down that repo if you want to code along, put your name in the chat once you have it. And just so you all know, this is a 2-hour lesson. So I'm going to take a break at, let's do 3 o'clock. We'll take a 10-minute break, okay? And this is going to be almost entirely emphasizing the front end. There is some Rails that you need to do for the code challenge, obviously, but you'll have had a lot of Rails time and not as much front end time. But there's that study hall right after this to follow up with any Rails questions. So cool. Ruby, is that what you're getting when you do bundle install, Carlos?
It's just saying that the gem file specifies 2.63.
Okay.
I got the same thing.
Okay. Oh no, updating Ruby now. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you can update it, hopefully. All right, let's see what happens. Hopefully this doesn't cause a lot of issues to update it.
Yesterday we had that happen when we were doing some of the Kyle, and like it took 15 minutes for stuff to install, and then once it was installed, it said, oh no, you actually need 3.6.1, so switch back.
Okay. I don't know why it's working for me. All right, well, I'll tell you what, just because I don't want to spend all of our time on this Rails repo, I might just go ahead and get started. Is that okay with everyone? Because I don't want to spend 15 minutes on Ruby gem issues. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Just know though, when you do the code challenge, you will be building a one-to-many relationship on your own. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So you'll be building a one-to-many relationship on your own for the code challenge. This repo is a many-to-many, so don't let that confuse you. One-to-many are easier, right? So just keep that in mind. Change in gem bundle. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get going. I hope it works for you. Unfortunately, yeah, we don't have time to spend 15 minutes with Ruby gem issues. Sorry, guys. So we're gonna keep moving on. Okay, sound okay? Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and Rails DB create, And again, keep in mind for the code challenge, you need to make your own backend. All right, that's a one-to-many. But I want us to spend most of our time on the front end because that's where a lot of the new stuff is, right? So we have Rails DB migrate and Rails DB seed. Cool, and Rails S, and I'm gonna start it on, let's do 3005. Cool. So I'll go to localhost 3005. Awesome. And let's just make sure this is working. Okay, cool, so that's working. So at this point, I want to create a front end project. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And I encourage you to code along for me with the front end. Even if your back end's not working, you can still practice the front end code. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to make a new directory and we'll call it mkdir mod2 front end. Cool, and I'll cd into that. And I'm going to make, let's do a index.html and a index.js. Cool. And then I will open up that directory. All right, so I'm making my front end directory. Cool. All right. So first task that I want us to accomplish is if we look at that backend model, let me make sure I have Chrome where I want it. There we go. All right, so if we look at this backend model, we have articles and we have magazines. Magazines, great. And we have authors. Cool. So I'm gonna look at magazines here for a second. Awesome. So it looks like a magazine can have many articles. So let's go check that out here. So if we look at our controllers, we look at magazines here, this just has the index in it, and that's okay because we will create the other methods that we need. And then we have our magazine.rb as many articles. Yep, cool. So if I go back here, there's my include statement, okay? Have you guys written an include statement in your other Rails lessons? Yeah, so we're familiar with this. Awesome. So this enables me to include all of the instances that belong to this particular model. So that's exactly what we want. Cool. All right. So for our first task, what I would like us to do is I want to build a home page that lists all of the magazine names. Okay, so I want to build a browser page, right, that lists all of the magazine names. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I have this index.html and this index.js. First thing that I'm going to do is the main operator, right? And then I'm going to throw my script tag at the bottom. And why am I throwing my script tag at the bottom?
To make sure everything has a chance to load before the script gets called.
Yep, and what is that everything? What is the everything that we're waiting to get loaded?
Well, the HTML is read from top to bottom.
Yep.
So if you're trying to load your JavaScript too early, there won't be any JavaScript there, and it's gonna throw you an error saying, what the hell?
Exactly, exactly right. Cool, and in this index.js, I think I'll also create like a header and throw in here an H1 that says, this is the list of all of my magazines. Cool. All right, so now if I go to index.js, I obviously don't have anything in here yet. And if I want to list all of my magazines, what's the first thing that I'm going to need to do?
Fetch.
Yep, fetch. Awesome. So I'm going to fetch from the magazines endpoint, Command C. Cool. We'll do that. All right, so that's the URL that I'm fetching from. And then I need to turn that response into JSON, right? Response.json. And then I need to do something with that now converted back into JSON response. So I'll probably do result. And then let's call a function here. We'll call like handle data and pass in result here. There we go. Awesome. All right. So now I'm going to define that function. All right. So I'll do function, handle data, and this is data ultimately, right? Cool. And we want to get a list of all of our magazines. So let's look at this really quick. Magazines are coming in and it has a name. So it makes sense for me to render the name, right? Let's go ahead and do that. All right. So I'm going to make sure I'm working with the data that I think that I am. I'm going to console log data here really quick and get my light server going. It should have been step 1. So get my light server up. Cool. If I open my console, there's my array. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Cool. All right. So now we can do something with this, right? We want to get a list of all of these magazines on the screen. And I'll tell you what, there's one more thing that we want to do with this list. We want to create a list with all of these magazines. But when I click on a name of the magazine, I want it to take me to a show page on my browser, okay? Which is going to list all of the information having to do with that magazine, okay? So, and I just want to say that we are going to cover some topics that we haven't had in class yet or that we haven't given classes on, and that's completely okay. The Mod 2 code challenge is, out of all the code challenges, the one that I expect people to pass on Fridays, right? There's a lot of content, and that's all right. And we're going to teach more lessons on some of the stuff that you're seeing come up on Wednesday, okay? So just keep in mind, don't panic. Don't panic. Cool. All right. So I want to make a list of these names, but each of those names, I want to be a clickable link that when I click it, it takes me to a show page, okay? Cool. I like to work in small chunks, so let's make that list first. So maybe we'll do render list, and we can pass it. Let's think about this for a second, because I'm ultimately going to need, let's do this. I'm going to get rid of this outer function called handle data and instead just have render list, because this makes more sense to me. Render list. Okay, cool. All right, so now I have this function called render list. We need to do some DOM manipulation. What is the DOM manipulation that I need to do? What's your guess? What do you think?
Create list elements and then add the names to the image.
Yeah. So I need to create list elements. So let's do name or const name li equals document dot create element li. All right. And then, well, so we're making list elements, but ultimately I want them to be clickable. So what kind of element do we actually want to make?
Anchor element?
Anchor, exactly. Cool. So now we'll do name.inner HTML equals, and this is where we're going to set some inner HTML for our anchor tag. So we'll do A for our anchor tag, href equals, and we haven't actually defined this yet, and that's okay. And then we'll do, let's actually just get these appearing and then we'll mess with the href. So on the inner text of our anchor tag, let's do their names. So if we look at this data that came back, let's get a console.log in here again. We look at this data, it's an array with all of these objects. So we're going to need to iterate over all of these objects. So let's do that first. So we'll do data.forEach, and each of these are magazines. Cool. Magazine, fat arrow, and we're going to throw this inside this for each statement. Cool. And we'll throw this in here. All right, const name equals document.createElement, name.innerHTML, and we'll throw in our interpolation here. So we'll do magazine.name, okay? And then we need to ultimately append this to something. So let's append this. Let's do like a main here. And we'll throw an ID of equals linked list, like that. And cool. And then we'll do, we'll grab that element up here and we'll do const main list equals document.get element by ID. And that was link list. Cool. All right, so now we need to append it to that, right? So we'll do main list dot append, and we'll throw in name there. All right, so now if we hop on to our browser, Command R, we should be seeing this. Render list. Oh, let's try this as a map. See if that works. Magazines. Let's see what's going on here. It makes me wonder if I'm not grabbing the correct thing here. Main list. And I have link list. Yep. I'm just going to console log main list to make sure I'm getting it. Do console.log main list. Okay, so there it is. So then why is main list.append name not working? I'm gonna look at the elements really quick and just see. There's the main. Oh, there's all the 8 anchor tags. Okay. It just doesn't appear to be inserting my actual text, which is really interesting.
Are you able to put an anchor tag inside of an anchor tag? So it looks like, isn't that?
Oh, you're right. Forgive me for that. Let's try making this an LI instead and see if this works. Okay, so now these are empty. And then if I look at, so it's not doing inner HTML the way that I thought it would. Let's try this again. We'll do. What?
Do we need to define where the anchor is for A?
You mean the href? Could. And then our A, and then href equals, I mean, we haven't written it yet, but show.js will be eventually what we go to. So we can do, make this new file of show.js. And actually, sorry, it's going to be show.html. Let's make that as well. Show.html. What am I missing here? Why is this not? my console. So here's my main. I wonder if I just put a text here, what happens? Okay, interesting. And we have it interpolated with our backticks, and it is. Why isn't this working?
Do you need to do like plus equals, like concatenating the string?
That's a thought. I shouldn't have to concatenate because I'm interpolating though.
Because we're doing a map and not a for each, so it's not.
I don't think it's the map, because otherwise I would need a return statement if I did a for each.
Does it have to do with like how you create the anchor with the create element, and then you're trying to say inner HTML is also an anchor? So like you're anchoring inside of the anchor?
Try that. But when we switched it to an LI, it didn't work either. What is this missing here? An inner HTML.
HTML have to be all capitals there?
I think that's potentially what it is. All right. Yeah. All right, cool. So HTML was not capitalized. So that was our bug. Okay, so now we have our list elements with our anchor tags nested inside. Awesome. Okay, cool. But of course, if we click this, it doesn't go anywhere because our index.html show page is blank, right? So we have this inner HTML taking us to show.html, which at this point in time is empty. So we need to build that out. So let's go do that. We have our index.html and our show.html. So let's just flesh out a quick HTML doc. And we'll just do a quick H1. This is the show page. Cool. And then we will attach our script here for our show.js page. We'll do source equals show.js. All right. Cool. So now, if I click on this, it takes me to the show page. Great. But we, of course, want the information for this particular magazine, right? If I want the information for this particular magazine, what endpoint do you think I need to hit from my backend? What endpoint?
Slash whatever the ID is for that magazine.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go take a look at that. So if I try to do that, I don't think this is set up. So we do 7. Cool. We don't have a show index set up. So let's go do that. So right now we are in the magazine controller and we want a show page. And I think we can just copy something really quick from, let's do this. I'm just gonna grab this so we can be super fast about it. And paste this in and we'll do magazine equals article.find params ID render JSON. All right. Not have this set up. Articles path, magazines path, authors path. Okay.
Doesn't need to be magazine.find.
Yes, thank you. All right, let's serve this again. Okay, so if we do a Rails routes here, looks like my magazines controller doesn't have that. It's not what I want. Okay. Do you guys remember what the syntax is for this in Rails for generating a new route to show?
I think if you just go to your routes, it says only index right now, and we can just add show to it, which is in the config, and then down at the bottom of that one.
Okay. So resource, Rails, G, magazine, cool. Show, and let's just do the rest here as well. All right, awesome. So let's try this again. Thank you. And cool. Okay, awesome. So I also want to include an include statement in that as well. So if I go back to my magazines controller, I also want include, and we'll do our articles. Okay, cool. So now if I go back to my browser, I should see all of those articles in there. Perfect. Okay, so we've now set up a show index on our back end, and we want to be able to do something with that on our front end. So if we go to our JavaScript, we have now linked our index.js, in our show HTML, we have now linked our show.js file, right? And this is empty. Who has an idea what my first step might be here? What do you think?
Fetch.
Fetch, and what endpoint am I fetching to? What do you think?
So you're gonna fetch to magazines and then put like a question mark after?
Yeah, I like that idea, because we need to actually hit the ID of the magazine that we clicked on. So we're gonna leave it like this for now, and I'm gonna show you how we get the ID that we actually want here, okay? So remember when I said I'm gonna introduce some things that you guys haven't had a class on, and that's okay? This is that moment. So deep inhale, I'm gonna show you what the code looks like. We're gonna go way more in depth into it on Wednesday, okay? So the way that we're going to be able to send over the specific ID of the item that we've clicked on is by use of query params, okay? So what that means is that inside of this anchor tag, right here in this index.html, I am going to pass over some information through the href, which is kind of interesting, right? So if I watch in my browser, when I click on that, right here, I can click on this and it takes me to this URL, show HTML. We're going to include more information here than just the show.html. So there's going to be more information inside of our URL. And like I said, it's okay if that's a little bit of a head scratcher right now. We're going to explain why on Wednesday. For now, I'm just going to show you how to code it. Okay, cool. So let's do that. So we have this magazine.name. And if I wanted the ID of this magazine, where would I get that from? What do you think?
It's magazine.id because it's in that data that we...
Yeah, it's magazine.id. Awesome. So this is how we're going to send it over. Okay, and again, bear with me if it's okay if this is a little confusing, but you need to add a question mark here, okay? And we're going to do ID equals magazine, and of course interpolated, right? Magazine.id. Cool. So the code is that simple. The concept's a little bit more complex, but that's how simple the code is, okay? So I want us to see something in our browser really quick. So if I go back and I click on this, what do you see in here? What I included, right? Or Kyle, yeah, you raised your hand, right? Yeah.
I was just saying 5.
Yeah. So we see this ID equals 5. Awesome. And I want us to note something here that I can call this whatever I want. All right. I can call this dog, and it pops up in my URL. If I click this as dog equals 5, I'm calling it ID because that's what it is. Okay. So just make sure that this is called what you want it to represent, right? Whatever the value actually is. Okay. So we are now on a show page that has, oh, we got to click, come back here. Okay. So we're now on a show page that actually includes that magazine's ID. And we want to get it somehow so that we can use it, right? Because we want to replace this question mark with that ID. All right, so the way that we're going to do it is with the following code. Let me grab this because I almost never do this. Awesome, okay. So we're going to create a new variable, and it's called const new, or search params equals new, okay? URL, search params, and I think it was you guys that I was talking to about this, about how JavaScript is a prototype-based language, and sometimes we see these things that look like classes. So this looks like a class because it's ultimately a prototype that we're accessing, so just keep that in mind, right? It's a built-in tool for us that JavaScript gives us. So we have new URL search params, and then we're going to do window.location.search. All right, so I want to ask, just based on what we typed here, I don't expect anyone to have the exact correct answer, but I kind of just want to get a sense of what's going through your mind. What do you think this is doing? Just using what you know about JavaScript so far, what do you think this is doing?
It's looking at your browser window and what the location of your current URL is.
Yeah, exactly. So it's literally looking for this, okay? So the language is, I think, pretty non-abstract there. It's pretty clear. And again, we're gonna have a whole class on how this actually works, but for now, this is what the code is, okay? Cool. All right, so we have the search params equals new URL search params, window.location.search. And now, what I ultimately want from this is the ID, right? So this is what I need to do. I need to do const ID. And again, I can call this dogs, I can call this bananas, I can call it whatever I want. I'm gonna call it ID because that's what it is. So I'm gonna do const ID equals search params, and it's referencing this const. So I can call this dog, I can call this dog, right? I'm not going to because it's quite realistically search params. So I'm gonna do search params dot get and ID. What do you think this does? Who has a thought on what this does? This line right here, line 2.
It's getting whatever you calling it ID when you're searching, like in your URL, so it's getting whatever you're assigning to that ID.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if I called this dog and over here, I called this dog, it would equal the same thing, right? But I'm calling it ID because it makes the most sense. All right,
So Jesse,
cool. Yeah.
A question. Back in the window.location.search, is the .search just saying look at the URL and do everything after the query question mark?
Yeah, exactly. So grab everything post this question mark. Yeah. And again, we'll spend a lot more time on this on Wednesday. But just know this is the code that you need. Yeah. Cool.
Hey, Jesse, question unrelated to this particular lesson, but
Yeah.
are our code challenges going to come out on Wednesday then instead of Tuesday because of the hackathon tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. So it'll come out on Wednesday instead of Tuesday because of the hackathon. If you guys have feelings on that, obviously feel free to share them. We have made an adaptation to extend it till Monday if we have to, but most of the time students are able to get it done by Friday. But always remember that these are designed to be passed on Friday. So no panicking until Thursday night, okay? Cool. Does that help answer your question, Lynn?
Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the code or the hackathon actually does a lot of what you need to do for the code challenge, at least for the back end. So it's good practice that way. Cool.
So we only get 3 days, 3 attempts this week instead of 4?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah, and like I said, if we feel like it needs to be extended until Monday, we do make that exception for students. But most of the time students are able to get it done by Friday. Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. So now I have this ID value, and if I console.log ID, I should hopefully get what I think I'm going to get, right? Which is in my console, I get this ID. Okay, I'm gonna ask for another guess. What do you think I'm going to do with that? Now that I have this ID, what do you think I'm going to do? What would we like to do?
Display it.
We want to display all the information of that particular magazine. Exactly. And how can I use this ID to ultimately grab all of the information of this particular magazine? What do you think?
Put ID after the question mark.
Does it go after the question mark? It is going to go inside this URL. Does it go after the question mark? What do we think?
No, you're right. It goes before. I'm sorry, I think. So
Interpolation with the ID?
Yeah, so there's no question mark, right? It does get string interpolated. So we're going to do this, throw in an ID, and then of course, this is backticked, right? So we can use that string interpolation. Cool. So that should perform a fetch to what endpoint?
Magazine with the ID that matches the search params.get ID.
Awesome, exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and do what we normally do with fetch, right? Which is response.json, and then we got to do something with it. I like to make sure I'm getting my response back. So I'm going to throw this into a console.log. We'll do results here. Okay, cool. Let's make sure this works. So if I hop back over here and click home and garden, there's my response. Awesome. Great. Okay, so what I want to do with this show page is I want to display any additional information about this magazine, which for this one, it has a name and, okay, oops. We wanted 5. It has a name and a category. And then I want to display all of the articles associated with it. And then I also want to make a list, just like we did with the magazine names. I want to make a list of the articles that when I click on that article, it takes me to that article show page. Sound good? Cool. All right. So what time is it? 2:41. Awesome. I think we can wrap this part up in the next 20 minutes and then we'll move on to, we're on to like some of the final stuff. Okay, cool. So let's make a function with this. We'll do a render info function and we'll pass in result. All right, and with this function, we want to accomplish a couple things. We want to render all of the information regarding this particular magazine, and then we also want to render the list of articles. So I'm gonna do this render info And actually, I might change this to handle info. Handle info. And inside here, I want to invoke render magazine info. And then I'm also going to want a function called render article list. Cool. And because I like to be conscientious with my data, I'm going to be really considerate about what I'm actually passing into each of these functions. So this one takes the full result. Render magazine info, if I can look at that data again, now we'll look at this one, has a name and a category. Okay, cool. So I think what I'm going to pass into render magazine info is result, and actually, let's rename this to info, right? Because we can call it whatever we want when we define it. We have to be specific about when we're passing an argument in. We can name our parameter whatever we want though. So let's call this info. I'm going to pass in, based on that object that I got back, I'm going to pass in info.name. And then what else were we wanting to render? The category, right? So what else am I going to put inside this field?
Info.category.
Info.category. Awesome. All right. So we have info.name and info.category. Perfect. Let's go ahead and define that. So we'll do function render magazine info, and we can call this whatever we want when we're defining the parameters, right? So I'm going to call it name and category. And first thing I'm going to want to do is console.log my name and category. Cool. All right. Before I build that out, I'm just going to complete my handle info function and take care of this render article list. So again, if we're looking at this data type, right, we've received an object that has this key of articles, which is ultimately an array. Cool. So I want to render the article list, which implies that it's plural. So I think I will send that entire array of articles to this render article list here. What should I call this then? Or sorry, what should I feed into this argument field here? If I want to pass in the entire array of arguments, what do I pass into this field?
Info.articles.
Yep, info.articles. Awesome. All right, so we come down here, we can define that. So function render article list, and that takes in articles, and we'll console.log articles, right? Awesome. Okay. So now if I go over here, I can see in my console log my name and category and that array of articles. Cool. So let's start actually putting some things on the screen, right? All right, let's do magazine info first. What do I need to do for this? So we need to do some DOM manipulation. So we can do const name equals document.create element. Let's do a h2 for this. And then we need to manipulate it. And this is a string, so we'll leave it as a string. Inner text equals name. And actually, I should rename this something since I have this here. So we'll do name element. Cool. And then dot inner text equals name. Perfect. And then I need to do the same thing for category, right? So we'll do const category element equals document.create element. Let's make this an h3, right? And then we'll do category element dot inner text equals category. Cool. And then we have one final step, right? We have to figure out where we're appending this to. So let's go do that in our HTML. So we have this show HTML. Let's do this inside of our body. So we'll do main like this. And where do I want to put this? Let's give this an ID of equals show main, like that. And then we'll do const show main equals document dot get element by ID. And we called it show main, I believe. And then we'll need to append this, right? Cool. So we'll do show main dot append, and we have name element and category element. Great. All right, let's go see if that's on our screen. Sweet. There we go. All right. So my next task is that I want to render all of my articles as a list of links. And when I click an article, it takes me to that article show page. Have we done something like that already? I'm seeing some nods. Where did we do this? Do you guys remember?
With the magazine?
With the magazine, right. So, because a key quality of being a programmer is our efficiency, I am going to just copy some of this functionality out. Cool. So I'll do this function render list, and I'm going to grab this, Command C, and hop over to this show.js and adapt some of it. So I have render article list. This is called render list. And I passed in articles instead of data. I'm going to rename this to data. Cool. And I'm going to grab all of this. We'll do a command like that. And let's start adapting this a little bit. Instead of a magazine, this is going to be a what?
Article.
Article. Great. And does an article have a name? Let's see. They have a title. So we got to change that. So we'll do title, which means move zoom. This needs to change as well, right? Article.title, and this will be article.id. Awesome. And we'll change this to title and title. Great. All right, let's go see if that appended. And main list is not defined. Oh, that's because we called it show main. Great. All right, there are my articles. Cool. Awesome. So, of course, if I click on this, this is the show page. Ahmed is cool. Oh, what just happened? Oh, it's taking me to that show.html. Gotcha. And so it took me to article.id. All right, we could refactor this into being reusable. I want to keep it simple though for now. We're going to create a whole separate page of show that is for our articles. Okay, cool. So let's do that. So let's create a new file here. We'll call it articleshow.js. HS. .js, and we'll do article show.html. Cool. And same exact thing, right? We got our script tag. And this is going to be src equals article show.js, right? And we'll throw a H1 here. It says, this is the article show page. Cool. And then we have this article show.js. Great. So now if we go back to our show.js, which is for our magazine, right? We want to change this to what? What does this get changed to?
Article show.
Article show. Great. All right. So now if I click this, sweet, there we are. Perfect. So we now want to list all of the information having to do with this particular article. So again, we've done this before. Where have we done this? How about this? What are we going to do? Where have we done this before? So in order to get all of the information having to do with this particular article, what am I going to do?
Another fetch based on search params of the ID.
Exactly. All right, have I done that before?
Yep, top of show.js.
Awesome. All right, so let's just copy some stuff here. So I'm gonna grab all of this. Command C, we'll paste this in, and I just have to change this URL to articles. Zoom, stop. Okay, articles. And let's do a console.log here instead. All right, let's go check that out. Okay, articles might not have a show set up, so let's go check that out. But how do I know that, by the way? How do I know that articles doesn't have a show route set up?
Action controller routing error.
Action controller routing error, exactly. All right. Yep, right there. Okay, so if we go to our back end, let's go set that up. Again, because I'm lazy, right? But also because I want to be fast. I'm just going to copy this guy, Command C, go to my articles.
I think it has it, just doesn't have the route.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So let's go to our routes. So config routes, there we go. And if we go to articles, we'll give it the show. Let's give it create while we're in here too. All righty. Cool. Okay, there we go. There's our response. So in here, I'm not going to worry about author right now because remember for the code challenge, it's a one-to-many relationship, not a many-to-many. But what we can render is the title, right? Yeah, I think for now we'll just render the title, which is fine. Cool. So let's do that. We have this article, and all we're going to do is render the title. So let's do another render info. And nope, just render info, not magazine. Result and handle function render info. And 3 steps of DOM manipulation, right? So we'll do const article h1 equals document, and that's not spelled right. There we go. Document.create element by ID, and we'll do an h1 for this one. And then let's do article h1 dot enter text equals info dot, what was it, title. So we'll do that. And then we'll append it. Yep.
Is it create element by ID or just create element?
Oh, just create element. Thank you. Cool. And then we want to append it. So let's check out our HTML. for our article show. And there's already an H1 in here. So I kind of want to just, well, no, for your guys' sake, we'll do something else. Let's throw in a main here. And we'll do an ID equals article main. And we'll hop back over to article show. And we have to first grab that element, right? So we'll do const article main equals document dot get element by ID, and that was article main. And then append this. So we'll do article main dot append article H1. All right, let's go see what happened. There it is. How to code. Okay, so it is 2:58, so we have great timing. I have the instructions for the code challenge right here, so I just want to review what we did as vague as possible, right, in terms of what tasks are required on the code challenge. We'll take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, I'm going to show you guys the final piece on the code challenge. Sound good? Cool. All right, first thing that you would need to do is create a backend, right, with a one-to-many relationship and set up an index and show endpoints for those models, right? But it's a one-to-many relationship. You need to create out a web page that lists all of, I can't say which model, but one of your models, right? It's going to list all of those and their names and their links to a show page. So let's review what we did with that. So we have our index.js, which made a list of all of our magazines. And when we clicked on a magazine, it would take us to our magazine show page, right? Okay. Cool. And then you need to, cool, reading through all these things. So remember we used query params to be able to grab this ID out and ultimately make a fetch to this endpoint, right? Which would then render all of its relative information and also a list of all of the articles that belonged to it, all right? And then this list of articles, they were also links that would link to each show page for that article. And in that article show.js, exactly like we did with the magazines, it would send a fetch call to this show endpoint of this particular article and then render the relevant information for that. All right. So that is, I would say, like 80% of the code challenge, setting up the backend, then being able to do this. The next step for the show, or for the code challenge, is you need to be able to create using, if we're using our context here, we need to be able to create a magazine, right, that has an associated article to it, okay? So the way that you do that is through an option select and an HTML form. So we are getting into some pretty new stuff. I believe query params were new for you. I believe that HTML forms and option selects are going to be new for you as well. And that's okay. I'm just asking you guys, be really graceful to yourselves because you're not supposed to pass this until Friday and we haven't even taught you some of this stuff yet. So that's okay. But any questions about what we did so far? Okay, cool. Hopefully this is kind of giving you an idea of what you need to do so that going into these lessons in the future, you know how they all fit together. Cool. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So at 3:10, we'll come back together and we'll build out that final portion. All right, so I'm just going to stay in the room, but I'll just turn off my camera and mute. We'll come back at 2:10. Cool.
So Jesse, I know it's like way more complicated than we're getting, but
Hmm?
when we get to having like a many-to-many, are we gonna have to do fetches to multiple different like endpoints to get the data to then put into stuff?
I don't think so. For this one, this is a many-to-many. At some point, you will need to, I think, potentially do more fetches than just the couple that we've done. For you though, the code challenge is a one-to-many, so you shouldn't
Right.
have
I'm
to.
just thinking
Yeah.
like further down the line, like if I was trying to build a website actually using this data, and on the
Yeah.
article page, I wanted it to show the title and the author and the magazine.
Mhm.
Like, how are we going to end up pulling in all of that different information?
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it, you know, how you configure your backend obviously plays a huge part in that. So let me share my screen really quick. I think in that case, what I probably would want to do is, where is that backend? Yeah, so I'd probably want to hit the join table controller. So in this one, I think articles, yeah, articles is the join. And then let me think about that.
Because
I'm
like
just,
if you didn't include,
yeah,
if you cross-reference like what the like author ID in the actual article was compared to author IDs in the author's list.
yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking. So I would prefer to do that logic on the back end for sure, but it also depends on like what kind of app you're building. So if you're building an app whose sole purpose is to render information, right, something that looks a little bit more like Excel, you'd probably want to do it on the front end, just because you don't have as much opportunity to be like, here's the magic show of front end UX UI friendliness. Because usually what that means is that you can have all these things happening on the front end while the back end is making those heavy data calculations. However, if the entire point of your app is the data calculations, I would flip it and throw that data processing on the front end instead. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. And I think, is everybody, basically everybody's back here. All right, so because we have about 45 minutes for this one, and I do want to leave some questions or time at the end for questions with you, but we can cover HTML forms pretty thoroughly for this section, I believe. So just to review, more or less the only thing that we've done is perform a lot of GET requests, right? So we're able to see some information, but we're not able to actually create any brand new information. And that's what I want us to do, is we're gonna go back to this home page. And on this home page, I want us to add the capability of creating a magazine that includes an article. So the purpose behind this, of course, is that I want us to mimic that one-to-many behavior that's on the code challenge. So for yourselves, just think of it as, let's say that someone in lifestyle read, let's say someone in lifestyle like read an article in sports or an Oprah and Home and Garden, they want to include it in their next issue. That's kind of what we're gonna sort of consider here, or not lifestyle, but like, let's say that someone wants to create a magazine that includes all the articles that Home, Garden, Oprah, Lifestyle, Sports does, right? And then we can add those articles to it. So I understand that that's a little confusing, but just keep in mind that we're going to be, for the code challenge, you're going to be working in one-to-many relationships. So what I want us to do is to create a brand new magazine and add an article to it. So pre-existing article to a brand new magazine. Did I get there in the end? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with that. And you guys can see my browser okay? Cool. All right, so step one for this, we need to actually give us the ability to create this, right? So we're gonna do that by creating a form. We're gonna do this form on our main page, so this index.html, and we'll do it inside of our main as well. So let's go ahead and do this. We'll create a form. So we'll do form like that. And then a form needs inputs, like this. And I'm trying to think of what else we want to put here for now. Well, I guess we just, so what does a magazine have? A magazine has a magazine has a name and a category. Cool. So we just need name and category. So let's do that really quick. So we'll do input name and let me think about this. So name equals, oops, name, because that's, I know this is a little confusing, but the name of this input is going to be equal to name because that's what it's expecting on the back end. And then we'll do another one of these, but the name is going to equal category. And let's give these placeholders. So we'll do placeholder equals name and placeholder equals, oops, category. All right, let's go check that out. So I should see in my browser form. There we go. Cool. And we can also create a submit here as well. So let's do that. We'll do input and type equals submit. Okay, so what that's going to do is by default create a button for us that says submit. You don't have to press the button, you just can click enter and the form knows that you're submitting the information that's been placed inside of it. Cool, so as you can see, we have our name placeholder is what's giving us that gray text right there and our category, right? And ultimately the name and name here is what's going to give a label, essentially a key to the value that we put into our form. And we're gonna see that coming through on our back end. So know that that's coming. All right, but we want to be able to create this using a pre-existing article. So what that means is that we need to actually obtain the list of all of the articles. So if I need a list of all of the articles, what do you think I'm going to do? I need a list of all existing articles. What am I going to do?
Fetch.
Fetch, exactly. All right, so in this case, it won't be to magazines, it'll be to articles, right? It'll be dash articles. Cool. Then we have to do our dot then and response.json, dot then result. And ultimately what we're going to be doing with this is creating something that's called an option select. So what I'm hoping to create here is an additional field that has a drop-down menu that lets me select a pre-existing article, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say add option and we'll pass in result. All right. So then we'll define this function, add option, and we'll call this articles because that's what it is. And let's just console.log this for a second. Let's spell this right. Cool. All right. Get 404. Did I spell that wrong?
You put options instead of option.
Oh, thank you. And I do want that to be plural there. And then I also need to make this articles. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's my response of all of the articles. Perfect. All right. So I want to add an article. So let's do that. Magazine. Oh, well, this is the join. So let me think about this for a second. So for magazine ID, author ID, might not let me do this because these all have pre-existing magazine IDs. All right, let's see what we can do with this. But because it's a many-to-many, we might run into an issue, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. All right, so we have our articles. And we know that we're getting those, and we ultimately want to add these options. So the first thing that I need to do is actually add an option field onto my index.html. So I'm going to do, we'll do right here, we'll do input and name equals article ID, and we'll do, oh, nope. And the type, I believe is, there we go. And the type should be, or actually, let's do this. So select and name equals article ID, and it will be, let's do, and then close that off, and then select, oops, nope. There we go. Okay, so we have our select there, and we're going to give it an ID here as well. We'll say article select. Cool. So now if I go to my browser, I should see this select here, and I do. Of course, it's empty right now because I ultimately want to fill it with what?
Your articles.
My articles. Awesome. All right. So in order to do that, I'm going to hop back over to my index.js, and we now have an ID on this. So I'll grab this element. So we'll do const select equals document dot get element by ID, and we gave it an ID of article select. We'll just grab this, Command C, throw this in here, and then we'll need to go over our articles and create options for each one of those articles. So we'll do articles.map and article. All right, and we'll need to do const option equals document.create element option. And we'll do option dot inner text equals article dot, I think it's title. Let's go take a look at that. Yep. Title. And then we'll need to do what is it? It's option, I believe it's option.name. Let's try this. Option.name equals article.id. And that should, or no, sorry, option name equals article, maybe we want it like that. Article ID, and then option.value equals article.id. And then we need to append option to select. So we'll do select.append option. All right, cool. And if we go to our browser, cool. So I have this how to code. So I have all of my articles listed. That's great. If I create a new one, so Kanye and art. Cool. So now let's go see what happened on our back end. So we hit enter. And so now if I go to my back end and I look at the server back there, let's scroll up here for a second. All right. Oh, it hasn't sent it yet because we need to add something to it. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to hop back over to our index.html. And on the form, we need to add our method, which is going to equal post, because that's we're ultimately wanting to create a new item, right? So we need to use the post method. And then our action. And our action is going to be the URL that we're posting to. So in this case, it is articles. So we'll grab this guy, Command C, and paste it right here. Alrighty, so let's give that a go. So we do a new one, and we'll do that. We'll hit submit. Okay, raw number of arguments, given 1, expected 0. So let's go take a look at that. So that means our form is working. But if we head over to our back end, okay, so these are the parameters that came through: the name, the category, and the article ID. Oh, and I realized we were supposed to be posting to magazines, not articles, but we'll fix that in a second. What I want us to really look at here is this parameters object. What does that match on our front end? What is the pattern that you're recognizing here between this and what we just put on our front end?
It's in the same order as the inputs.
It's the same order as the inputs, exactly. So that name, category, article ID, if we look at that HTML, do you see the pattern here? That name field is what's creating the key, and the value is ultimately whatever we're typing in to that field, right? Pretty cool. So these are the parameters that came over. So let's fix, we're meant to be creating magazines. I accidentally sent us to articles. So let's put this as magazines, right? Alrighty, cool. So now if I do this, we will go back here and we'll do our Jessica Pope and art and how to code and hit submit. And the action create could not be found for magazines controller. Okay, so let's go fix that. So if we go to our magazines controller, we have a show. So let's grab this and we'll just change it really quick. Command C and Command V, and we're going to be making a magazine, right? So we'll do magazine, magazine, and what all does a magazine have? It has, and I want this to go back to index.html, and I'm serving from 300. Where am I serving from on my front end? I am serving from, oops, 3000. Okay. Cool. So a magazine has a name and a category. So let's do that. So we'll do name, params, name, and category, and params, category. And we'll see if it lets us get away with this article ID. I don't think it will. But just so you know, this is how we would do it in a one-to-many. So we'll do article ID. All right. So I'm just gonna look at this schema really quick here. Where is this? Database, schema. And where is magazine? That's articles, magazine. So magazine just has a name and a category. So I don't think it's going to let us send over that article, but we'll talk about why you need to do that in a one-to-many in a second here. Okay, so now we go back to our front end and do how to code and hit submit. Cool. Yep, exactly. So it's expecting, oh, we need to close this off here with the bracket. So let's go do that really quick. Try this again, hit submit. All right.
Categories misspelled.
Thank you. And this is category. All right, and I don't think it's going to let us send over that article ID. Submit. And name. Brands. That one should work. Let's look at this for a second. All right, so we're posting a magazine and we sent over a name and a category and an article ID. If I look at this schema, magazines have a name and a category. All right, so that's correct, but the article ID it does not like, which is fine. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this for a second. So again, if this were a one-to-many, this would be working, but because we have a many-to-many, we're not able to pass over that ID. But if we were using a one-to-many, all right, we wanted to associate an article with the magazine, we would need to match whatever the schema is on the back end. So in this case, let's say that a magazine had a name, a category, and an article ID, right? So I am sending over a name, a category, and an article ID through my options select. A really great debugging tool for this is being able to look back through your parameters that you're sending over, right? So in this backend, you're seeing the started post and you're getting those parameters that you're expecting. There is one more thing here. So in this create, I have this redirect and it's set to index.html. What do you think that's going to do? What do y'all think?
Reload the home page after you submit.
Yeah, it's going to redirect me to the home page in my browser after this new instance is created. Cool. All right, so let's review this really quick. So we're able to create a new magazine with a drop-down that features articles, right? And if this was a one-to-many relationship, this would be working. It's not, so forgive me, but just know this is what you need to do, right? And then on our back end, we have this create, and it takes in the article ID, the category, the name, and then redirects us to that home page. Cool. All right, so the final feature on the code challenge is a filter. However, that is a bonus and we don't expect you to do that. So I'm not gonna talk about the filter today because I don't wanna overwhelm or overload, but know that that is just the bonus. So the very last feature, the filter. What questions do you all have about all of the things that we talked about today? You know, we talked about a lot.
Can you go back to your add options function?
Yeah.
So without this being like the exact code challenge, this is what the code challenge is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and keep in mind the main difference between this and the code challenge is that this is a many-to-many on the back end. Code challenge is a one-to-many, but this is the code challenge. This is exactly the code challenge, minus the filter, right? Because I think if that's a bonus, you all should, you know, spend some time on that on your own. But yeah. And just really quick, cool. Yeah, so whenever you're running into bugs, checking this backend server is going to be huge for you. Make sure that you're getting the parameters that you expect that you are. And then also keep in mind that you have this network tab as well. So let's look at this, right? Where is this? Cool. So I can see that I'm fetching what I think that I am. If I submit this, I should see this go across my network tab as well. Cool. And of course, I'm getting that 500 error, right? Because this is a many-to-many. But yeah. Yeah, so this is the code challenge. Other questions about everything that we accomplished today?
Can you show the form again, please?
Yeah. Do you want the HTML or the JavaScript?
Oh, the HTML, please.
Yeah. Cool. So just to review, for the code challenge, you need to set up a one-to-many relationship, okay? You need to set up endpoints that accommodate index, show, and on one of those models, a post, right? You need to, on your front end, have a list of links that when you click that, that takes you to the show page of one of your models. And then when you click the link that's rendered one of the, or sorry, and then in that show page, there's another list of links. When you click that link, it takes it to that show page for that model, right? And then you need to be able to create a new instance of a model that comes with an association to a different model, right? So in that option select, you have that ID, but ultimately the placeholder is the name of that given instance, right? Cool. And then the filter is the bonus. So, but this is what you need to do. I know it's a lot. Take it step by step, just break it up into those chunks. Remember that a lot of this is pretty similar, so you can copy and paste quite a bit of this code, right? But yeah, any other questions? Anything you would like to see again? Anything that you would like to have explained?
So how is the select getting the articles? Is it with that ID?
So the select is getting the articles right here. So we're doing this fetch request to our articles endpoint. And then over here, we're mapping over each article and we're saving the inner text to that article.title. And that value is that article.id. Yeah. So let's see that really quick. And you technically don't need this option.name. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that for y'all. But let's look at it in our browser. So if I do an inspect here on my elements, and I look at my body, and it's in main, right? I have this form, and inside my form, I have my select right here. And if I hit the drop down on the select, what am I going to see? What do you think if I hit the drop down here?
Should see all the articles, right?
I should see all the articles, right? But as option tags. Cool. So the value is 7. The inner text is the name. So the value is the article.id. The inner text is the article.title, right? Cool. Yeah, so I'm doing that dynamically with that fetch request. What other questions you'll have? What else? Is there anything else you need to review? Anything else you want to see? Let's just do a pulse check really quick. Fist of 5, so 1 through 5, 1 being, oh my God, I'm currently having a heart attack, and 5 is, I'm not gonna sweat about this at all. How are we feeling about the code challenge? Cool. So some 3s, 4s. Cool. All right. Like I said, most of this, so not most of this, but the HTML forms, the query params, The option select, we have not gone over with you yet. You will have classes on this on Wednesday. That's normally when we teach. This is about Wednesday. So don't worry, that's coming. But if you can do this, this is the code challenge. Cool. Any other questions? Anything else you want to see before I let you all go?
Something I missed was where you have that mod2 front end directory.
Yeah, I made a separate directory from this. When you do it on your code challenge, you'll want to have like a parent folder, right? So you'll clone down the code challenge, and then you'll have a backend folder that you create the Rails application in, and then you'll have a front end folder, right? And then there's one more thing. Did Kyle do cores with you guys during fetch? Okay, cool. So we're covered on that. Good. Yeah, great. And then keep in mind that Rails generates its own Git file. Do you guys know how to get rid of that? The Git file? Yeah, I think it's
that explains a lot.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of big frameworks almost always do that. So keep that in mind. Whenever you're working with a large framework, it almost always creates its own Git file. So yeah, cool. But it's just RM. It's just rm-rf dot git ignore gets rid of it for you. Cool. Well, any other questions before we leave? There are no stupid questions. If you're not feeling comfortable with this, let's stay on, keep working through it. We still have, 10, 15 minutes. So, but anything else anyone need?
You can upload this video today?
Yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, I'm pretty sure Damon has a video that is a one-to-many. So I would challenge you, if you're gonna do a burn and build a one-to-many relationship, right? Don't do the many-to-many. Burn and build the one-to-many, and then use the same techniques that we used today. Cool. Yeah, any other questions? All right. Oh, Adrian, did you have one?
I'm just wondering if you got rid of that, like, if you got rid of the whole article ID, would you be able to submit?
You mean
that's like
right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the option is it's actually still going to save that value as the article.id, but let's just see that go over here really quick. So we'll do another one. We'll do art and flowers and hit submit. And if I head to my backend, I should see in my parameters. Yeah, so as you can see, it's kind of interesting, but it keeps that value as the article.id, right?
And then where's the actual error? Why is it not getting submitted? I'm unclear.
Yeah, it's because it's a many-to-many relationship. And so if we look at my schema for a magazine, as you can see, my magazine is not expecting an article ID because it's a many-to-many. So that means that I have that join table versus that added ID of my joined model, right? But if this was a many-to-many relationship, this is exactly how you would do it. Exactly how you would do it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I would advise you to do. Do a build and burn with a one-to-many, right? You've had a lot of Rails experience at this point. I feel pretty confident you all can do that. And then review this video to do everything on your front end, and you would be good to go. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other?
Go into your form on your index.html.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, as you can see, why I didn't need the article ID on the option is because I have this name equals article ID on the select, right? So I am saving the value through the option, but I'm making that name on the select. Yeah. And again, don't feel overwhelmed by this. We totally don't expect you to have a complete understanding of how all this is working. We haven't taught classes on it yet. We will on Wednesday. Yeah. But this is what you need.
Can I see the show, Jesse?
Yeah. The HTML or the JavaScript?
HTML.
Cool.
I'm mistaken. I'm looking for where you put the ID into the anchor.
Yeah, so that would be the JavaScript. So it's right here. Yeah, so I'm using that query param, so question mark ID equals article.id. Yeah.
So that'll turn into HTML / whatever the ID is.
Yep. So this is also what this is actually going to do is take us to article show. Sorry, this is for the article page. So if we're on index.js, this will take us to that show.html and send over this ID, right? And so when we actually see it in the browser, let's go take a look at this for a second. Okay, so I click on this, and when I see it in the browser, it's passing this information for me through the URL, all right? So I'm building this tunnel, and then when I actually go to my show.js, I'm grabbing that ID from my URL with these 2 lines of code. And so then I'm using that ID to make a fetch request to that show page.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Other questions about this? Cool. Yeah, well, you have a study hall right after this too. So if you have follow-up questions, feel free to go to that. Keep in mind that the hackathon tomorrow, you're going to be working on the back end, but you're going to be working with people in mod 4. So any questions that you have about mod 2, ask them, right? And then on Wednesday, we'll teach more in-depth questions on some of those new concepts that I introduced today. But if you're going to build and burn, build that one-to-many, and then use these things that we did in the lesson today to build that out. Cool. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to let you guys go, but feel free to follow up with me if there's anything else. And I'll get this video posted today. So cool. And we got someone in chat. Oh, cool. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye.